Thank you, Jimmy James, by the way, for that message. Last night, apparently, we had an issue streaming to the website. I don't know why that was. But as you may have noticed last night, if you were here watching, and many of you weren't for whatever reason, I don't know why, but there was a ghost in the machine last night. There was some weird stuff going on, things moving here, there, everywhere, all by themselves, and we weren't streaming to the website last night, but tonight we are, even though everything is set up the same way. I did do some experimenting on it earlier today and found everything to be in working order. So my apologies to all of you All Access members for not getting the stream on the website last night. I wish I could tell you what happened, but after investigation, I don't know. Still a mystery. I'm still looking into it just to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Welcome to the show, everybody. Have I mentioned that it's Wednesday, March the 26th, 2025? On the show tonight, Mark Carney, China, Mark Carney, Bermuda, Mark Carney, Century Initiative, Mark Carney, World Economic Forum, Mark Carney, China, Mark Carney, Cars, Mark Carney. All right, just so you know where we're going tonight. Oh, also, Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney, is he under investigation in the United States for real? You may have seen a Facebook or Instagram post in the last few days saying, Mark Carney under investigation in the United States. Is he really? Well, I looked into that earlier today, and I'll have the answer for you a little bit down the road here on the show tonight, which is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Silver is amazing. It has several natural health benefits, and it's been used for hundreds of years for health and healing. That's the main reason they made silverware from silver. But seriously, this nano silver from Silverceuticals is the best and safest silver you can find. There are hundreds of studies and reports on it. I've read some of the studies myself, and it's mind-blowing. One of the things that sets Silverceuticals apart is that it washes out of your body in 24 hours. No silver buildup and no turning blue. And it won't even harm the good bacteria your body needs. It's so effective they can use very small concentrations of silver, like 10 and 32 parts per million, and still outperform other silvers that have up to 3,000 parts per million. It's safer and more effective at the same time. It is an incredibly small particle that is small enough to work through your body, but big enough not to fall out of suspension. They infuse it into almost all of their products. It works in facial serums, toothpaste, gels, and even gummies that work to help your immune system.
CanadaNanoSilver.com, the website. That is CanadaNanoSilver.com. You can get a hold of Kevin and Anna there through the contact tab, or you can call them even. 204-808-9292. And coming up in a couple of weekends in Calgary, Canada Nano Silver will be at the National Women's Show Stampede Park BMO Center. That is going to be April 5th and 6th. It's a Saturday and Sunday. The Saturday, they're there from 10 till 6. Sunday, from 10 until 5. And, of course, prizes to win. Kev, I understand you're going to be doing the same giveaway you did in Winnipeg at those two shows, the Women's Show and then the Health Expo, the $690 Canada Nano Silver prize package. Good on you, my friend. And all you need to do to enter that, if you're going to see these guys in Calgary in the next couple of weeks, is buy some product. And not only is the product superior than what you've been buying for the last 20 or 30 years from Shoppers Drug Mart or Walmart or wherever you do your shopping, they are us. Kevin and Anna with Canada Nano Silver are us. Just so you know, in case you didn't. CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. All right, let's say some hellos, starting with Rumble tonight. Nana Sue is watching. Hello, Goshi26, watching in Toronto. Notable says, still hating the first song. Have to leave it on mute. Sorry about that, Notable, but you know I change those things every so often. I'm going to leave that up for the next couple of weeks just because you said that. I was thinking about changing it as early as tomorrow, but not now. Patricia's watching in Cornwall. Hello, Nana Sue. Hello, Jimmy James in Calgary. Retired nurse 1958 is watching in Victoria tonight. Weary Human. Hello in Grand Prairie. And Lone Arnie. Lone Arnie is watching tonight on Rumble. Who else is here tonight? Let's see. On Facebook, we've got Daniel. We've got Gerald watching from St. Adolphe. We've got Denise watching in Nova Scotia. Hello, Dodie Ann and Larry. Alona watching in Calgary. Nathan, hello there. Colleen, Debbie, Michelle, Alan, Brian, whole bunch of people watching on X tonight. Now, what happened on X tonight, kind of weird. There's no thumbnail for the show, even though it's streaming live. Sometimes that happens. I don't know why. I send out the stream from here. It goes to all of the platforms, the Rumble and X and Facebook, even YouTube tonight. It goes out to, what's the other ones? Twitch, Telegram, shadowdavis.com. And once it gets to the platform, I have absolutely zero control over how it looks. So if you're looking on X tonight for the show and you can't find it, that's because there's no thumbnail. You have to actually hit the link if you want to watch the show on X tonight. Hello, Diane Fick. Betty Ann watching in Swift Current tonight. All right, let's begin with a story about, well, Mark Carney. This comes from the National Post. Carney defends Brookfield's use of Bermuda tax shelter, says structure helped pensioners. Well, we did that to avoid having to pay taxes 3 or 4 times, but it was strictly because of the pensioners. Not that you weren't getting a nice 10 or 15 or even 20% cut, right, Mark? The funds were geared toward investments in green energy and infrastructure, holding combined assets of $25 billion. So the funds were geared to, I want you to remember this, towards investments in green energy and infrastructure, because that is one of the reasons Mark Carney is possibly under investigation in the United States. Mark Carney defended today putting 2 green investment funds in an offshore tax haven while an executive at investment house Brookfield Asset Management. Well, not just an executive, not just any executive. How about the CEO, the big boss man? Carney told reporters at a campaign stop in Windsor. Oh, by the way, he also talked about something else there. We'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. That the funds were registered in Bermuda to avoid double taxation. Oh, the important thing, if I may, is that the flow through of the funds go to Canadian entities who then pay the taxes appropriately, as opposed to taxes being paid multiple times before they get there. You mean like we have to do if we make investments? Here's Mark Carney himself addressing the issue.
The structure of these funds is designed to benefit the pension funds, the Canadian pension funds that invest in them. The Caisse de dépôt, Ontario Teachers as 2 examples. The beneficiaries of those pension funds, teachers, retirees, municipal employees, they pay the taxes on their pension. That's the design. The follow-up is how do I know? I understand how the world works and the structure works, and have the ability to put in place all of the necessary rules to ensure that the appropriate taxes are paid here in Canada, as is the case in the example that you just gave. The taxes are paid. Ils sont payés ici au Canada. Okay, d'accord. Ensuite.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Tom Parry with CBC. Could I just follow up on that? Could you explain in the case of those Brookfield funds, like what was the argument for registering the funds in Bermuda? Is it ethical to do that? And is it something as Prime Minister that you'd have to crack down on? I'm not sure if it's a problem, but is that something that you'd have to crack down on?
I think the important thing, Tom, is that the flow through of the funds go to Canadian entities who then pay the taxes appropriately, as opposed to taxes being paid multiple times before they get there. So that's how we have the structure. That's the structure that all of our pension funds, for example, the Caisse de dépôt, or Ontario Teachers, or OMERS, municipal employees, or all the big pension funds in Canada, which are very successful, which protect
Why is he throwing a French word, like 1 or 2 French words into the middle of an English answer? Is he trying to look like he knows the language? Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Union workers, in many cases, I'm speaking of union workers today, and supply to them, it's those entities and their employees who are covered. So the structures work for that effect.
What's the advantage, though, of putting it into a place like
It ensures that it's an efficiency of a structure, so that ensures that the flow through goes to the entities that are resident in the countries.
But is it avoiding tax in any way?
It doesn't avoid tax because the tax is paid in, for example, the examples all I gave, the taxes are paid in Canada, yes. Okay?
Next question, Zach.
Well, if it doesn't avoid tax, then why'd you do it in the first place?
Mr. Carney, Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Just on your personal assets, do you have any, in Stripe and Brookfield, do you have any equity, stock options, or anticipate any future payments from either two of those companies?
So the first thing to say with respect to my personal assets is
I followed all the rules.
I have complied with all of the rules. In fact, I've over-complied with the rules in advance. So months and months and months in advance, and put in place.
Well, we still don't know, Mark, exactly what your interests are and where they are, and how much it is, and is it in conflict with you as the Prime Minister of Canada? You won't tell us.
Both divestitures, so I actually don't own directly any stocks in those companies, but since I had worked at those companies, I put in place ethical screens. So my approach to public life, and I've been in public life for more than 2 decades.
This guy's dirty. He's dirty. The defense comes after Radio Canada reported that 2 Brookfield funds personally overseen by Carney were registered in Bermuda, a well-known tax haven, according to relevant filings in the Ontario Business Registry. The funds, registered in 2021 and 2023 respectively, were geared toward investments in green energy and infrastructure. Again, I want you to remember that as we go forward in the show tonight, holding combined assets of $25 billion. Both funds were co-led by Carney, according to Brookfield press releases at the time. All right, here's the next Mark Carney story. This one has to do with the auto industry in Ontario. Carney promises $2 billion auto industry fund as Trump hits sector with tariffs, which are coming into effect on April the 2nd. They're going to be 25%. All right. So how is he going to do this exactly? Let's read the story. Homing in once again on the fractured Canada-U.S. relationship, Mark Carney unveiled a $2 billion proposal to protect Canada's auto industry while in Windsor today, one of the front lines of the tariff war. Calling it a strategic response fund. Oh, the Liberals are creating another fund. Isn't that interesting? Carney said the money would be used to boost the auto sector's competitiveness, protect manufacturing jobs, help workers gain expertise, and build a fortified Canadian supply chain. Does that mean he's going to try and nationalize the auto industry? Or is it a public-private partnership? Carney's announcement came hours before Donald Trump ratcheted up the trade war, announcing plans for this 25% tariff on all vehicles not made in the United States as of April 2nd. Our auto sector has always been there for our country. So in this time of uncertainty and need, Canada will be there for our auto workers. He said that in the shadow of the Ambassador Bridge just this morning. The crossing, it's an impressive bridge. In case you've never been there before, it's quite amazing. The crossing, what's the other one that I find more amazing, just a little off topic here? What's that big bridge that crosses from the States into Canada? Like 5 miles long or something. Goes over Lake Huron. I forget the name of it. The crossing not only connects Windsor and Michigan, but also helps shuttle millions of dollars worth of goods traded between Canada and the U.S. every day. Windsor is home to major auto plants like Ford and Stellantis. It's become synonymous not just with Canada's auto industry, but also its deeply intertwined trade relationship with the U.S. industry. Auto parts often cross the border multiple times, and added costs to tariffs and counter-tariffs would quickly snowball. Carney called that a huge vulnerability and promised to build an all-in-Canada manufacturing network to build more car parts domestically, limiting how often they cross the border during production. How are you going to do that? Have you already sat down with the CEOs of Ford and GM and talked to them about this? Because I'm sure, given the choice, they would rather base themselves in the United States. In the new world, that will be an advantage, he said. That will help insulate us from President Trump's trade threats, and it will grow the economy. How? You're spending $2 billion of our dollars to do that. Are you just going to print more money? If elected April 28th, Carney said his government would also prioritize and procure Canadian-built vehicles. I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? The government's going to buy the cars and then sell them to us? This guy is a communist. Notice, everything he's promised so far has heavy government involvement. We'll give you this. We'll give you that. Whereas Poilievre's platform is quite the opposite, actually. We want to unleash the power, want to create more jobs, so you guys lower the taxes 15% across the board so you guys can do what you want with the money you've earned. You don't have to come crawling to the government every time you want to eat. Later Wednesday, Trump moved ahead with a potentially devastating blow to Canada's auto sector and the Windsor region. What we're going to do is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. Trump announced that about 4:30 Central Time this afternoon. If they're made in the U.S., there's absolutely no tariff. Well, that's obvious. We'll start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we're at, and we'll go to 25%. The president did not suggest that there would be carve-outs for imports from Canada or Mexico. He called the tariffs permanent. The president has already imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. Yeah, that's devastating. That is devastating. But remember, this is not Donald Trump attacking Canada or any other country. This is Donald Trump trying to grow industry and manufacturing jobs in his own country, which is what he promised them he was going to do. Right? Oh, Mark Carney. According to the Canada News Network, and I was very suspicious about this, so I looked into it. According to the Canada News Network, Mark Carney is under formal investigation by the U.S. House Judiciary Committee for his role in an alleged conspiracy. Now, remember what I talked about before. Okay, so here's a story that goes back to March 7th, so it's not that long ago, 3 weeks, from Terry Newman at the National Post. Now, this is actually archived, at least a lot of this, in U.S. congressional records. So this is on the record. Mark Carney's plan for global climate domination. Just before entering the Liberal race, he was accused by House Republicans of being part of a green cartel. Okay? Mark Carney's greatest skill appears to be his remarkable ability to find a soft landing when things get complicated. His most recent exit was January 15th from GFANZ. Remember that name, GFANZ, an organization he founded and co-chaired, which is now being investigated by the U.S. House Judiciary Committee for allegedly violating antitrust laws by pressuring companies to adopt net zero goals. Whatever political motivations may be behind the probe, it indicates a major decline in popularity for the kind of climate-focused agenda Carney had been pushing. Apparently, he's lost half of the investment that he garnered back in 2018 when he formed this thing. And what did Carney do the day after his resignation from GFANZ? He officially threw his hat into the Liberal leadership race, hoping to become party leader and Prime Minister of Canada. The Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, GFANZ, was launched by Carney, who was then UN Special Envoy on Climate Action and Finance in April of 2021. The organization was set up as a UN-backed global coalition of financial and banking institutions in order to accelerate the transition to net zero by 2050 in line with the Paris Agreement. GFANZ operated like an umbrella, uniting various sector-specific alliances. Net Zero Asset Managers, which was launched in December 2020 and predates GFANZ, for example, is under the umbrella. My mistake, I said 2018, it's 2021. GFANZ's most recent troubles appear to have started June 11th, 2024, when the Republican-dominated Judiciary Committee in Washington released a report called Climate Control, exposing the decarbonization collusion in environmental, social, and governance ESG investing. The report alleged that GFANZ is part of a climate cartel which colludes to decarbonize companies by leveraging negotiations with management, shareholder resolutions, and board of director votes. Carney has said as much in interviews in the past year, maybe 2 years, where he says anybody who doesn't get on board is going to be climate roadkill. I'm paraphrasing that, by the way. According to the committee, this cartel forces companies to disclose their carbon emissions, reduce their carbon emissions, and enforce their disclosure and reduction commitments by handcuffing and restricting company management. The committee's stated concern was that collusion on decarbonization necessarily causes reduced output and higher prices, including in the critical fossil fuel, aviation, and agriculture industries, posing a significant threat to the economy and to the well-being of American consumers. Then, on December 20th of last year, the pressure on GFANZ increased, albeit indirectly. The same committee sent letters demanding information, communications, and documents to over 60 U.S.-based asset managers in regards to their involvement with GFANZ. Documents related to what the committee calls GFANZ's collusive activity are to be used to inform potential legislative reforms. On December 31st, GFANZ suddenly decided it would restructure. According to environmental advocacy group Global Canopy, GFANZ was originally an umbrella group for various financial institution net zero alliances that has now shifted to a less ambitious group formed by specific financial institution executives. GFANZ's focus suddenly changed as well, shifting to directing capital towards investments in energy transition, when only recently its focus was the more aggressive goal of phasing out financing for activities that do not align with the Paris Agreement. They think they can hide what they've been doing? In addition, GFANZ appears to have suddenly had a change of heart about requiring members to align with the Paris Agreement targets. Both versions of this mission statement sound bureaucratic and benign, until you consider Carney's words from his book Values. Firms that align, this is the actual quote here. Firms that align their business models with the transition to a net zero carbon economy will be rewarded handsomely. Those that fail to adapt will cease to exist. Pretty heavy. Was GFANZ's restructuring and focus change related to the committee's request for information? Who can tell? I'd say yeah. Relatedly, several major U.S. banks who had been the focus of other similar investigations exited GFANZ's net zero banking alliance in December and January, including Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Morgan Stanley. These are some of the biggest banks in the United States, maybe the world. Were these precipitous exits likely a result of growing skepticism towards these banks' ESG agenda? ESG Dive, a trade publication that covers news about environmental and social governance, appears to think so. It noted this shift followed pressure from U.S. Republican-led entities skeptical of ESG initiatives. Certainly interesting timing, considering that Trump was just about ready to come into power as well. It appears with GFANZ, Carney found himself in an uncomfortable situation, or at least a position that was being quickly drained of prestige. I guess ruling Canada is a pretty okay consolation prize after the organization you founded to direct global investments toward climate experience a mass exodus. To be fair, Carney and the Liberals have been courting each other for years. One thing's for sure. Carney always seems to have a backup plan when things get uncomfortable. And then it goes on through his history. I find that absolutely amazing. And don't think for 1 second that Donald Trump doesn't know this. Donald Trump absolutely knows this. Do you think that Donald Trump is going to negotiate with somebody like that? That's incredible. Mark Carney said today that he doesn't think he wants to start talking to China anytime soon at all about negotiating more tariffs or coming up with new arrangements in terms of trade. It's just not the time. It's just not the time. The tension is too high between the two countries. But here's Mark Carney last May in China. Remember, last night I told you that Mark Carney, and Pierre Poilievre for that matter, said this as well in a press conference yesterday. Mark Carney was in China last May to borrow $250 million US from China for Brookfield Asset Management. And while he was there, he talked to Chinese state television, and here's what he said.
The new industries, particularly around China's leadership in climate change and the further acceleration that's necessary for that, that's a crucial discussion, as is the discussion around AI and really the application of AI. We see China's leadership there in deployment of AI technologies, which is in many respects unique, and we can all learn from that.
Wait a minute. Let's go back again to the beginning.
The issues around the new industries, particularly around China's leadership in climate change and the further acceleration that's necessary for that, that's a crucial discussion, as is the discussion around AI and really the application of AI.
Okay, never mind AI. There's Carney talking about China taking a lead role in climate change reduction. And here's a story that came out yesterday from Al Jazeera. China's missed emissions target poses challenge to global climate efforts. Because they're bringing, 2, maybe 3 new coal-burning energy plants online in China every week still. They are still the world's leading pollution emitter by a mile. 30% of the world's pollution comes from China. China's carbon intensity fell less than planned for in 2024, even as Beijing made strides in renewable energy. Oh, China's doing it right. Oh, speaking of Carney in China, here's a CBC panel talking about Brookfield Asset Management going and borrowing $25 million from China. And now that Carney won't tell us what his assets are because they're in this blind trust, I'm following all the rules, we don't know exactly what the real story is. CBC had at least one conservative panel member on the other night. Watch.
On this attack, there's a lot of, it could be this, it could be that. There's no evidence of wrongdoing here that has been laid out. I mean, what do you see as the issue here for Mark Carney?
These are not activities that happened prior to any involvement with the government. If you look at the timeline, he was advising the Liberal Party on economic matters before going to China to have this meeting with a state-controlled bank about a private business dealing. The whole point the Conservatives are making around potential or perceived conflicts of interest is around him holding both those roles in parallel. So when he is pressed on these matters and on these potential conflicts of interest, he gets very edgy. You can tell he's visibly annoyed by these questions when they are posed to him. I point to the interview that he did with your colleague, Rosemary, that is emblematic of this. He should just answer the question, what the purpose of this meeting was, and especially advising the Liberal government at a time when relations with China were rightly incredibly frosty. We had just come off of the 2-year holding of the 2 Michaels. We've now since found out that they've executed 4 Canadians. It is fair for Canadians and Conservatives to be asking the question about the nature of his business dealings with a regime and a country that has been actively hostile and murdered Canadian citizens. It is fair to ask that at a time when he's also advising the Liberal Party of Canada on economic matters.
Yeah, I'd say, I was over there on business matters. Has he even commented on the China thing yet? I guess there's too much else going on. Here's another thing about Mark Carney. He dismissed École Polytechnique blunder, says his French is fine. Let me get rid of this ad here. This is from the Toronto Sun. Of course, I'm not from Quebec. Not everyone is from Quebec. Carney told reporters he's getting salty with them. Even more. I'm sure his handlers are saying, Mark, easy with the media. Carney's blunder on one of Canada's worst mass shootings is lingering over the Liberal leader. Speaking this morning in Windsor, so in one press conference, he managed to screw himself, 2, 3 times? Every time he opens his mouth, things get worse. It's amazing. Don't forget to like and share this. You guys get it out to as many people as you possibly can, because believe it or not, there are people in this country who are actually thinking about voting Liberal. And all they need to do is watch the first half hour of tonight's show. We're a half hour into the show, and already Mark Carney is destroyed. And we're going to keep destroying. Speaking this morning in Windsor, Carney fielded questions on Tuesday's campaign appearance, at which he misspoke several times about the 1989 École Polytechnique massacre, twice referring to Liberal candidate and shooting survivor Natalie Provost as Natalie Pronovost, and stating the shooting took place at Concordia University. Why? Because he wasn't living in Canada at the time. He was going to university in the United States. Natalie Pronovost, who out of the tragedy of the shootings at Concordia, in one sentence, in a half a sentence, he bones himself completely, became a social justice activist, and she's put her hand up and she's running for us, Carney said, in Nova Scotia. 14 women were murdered at École Polytechnique December 6th, 1989, by a gunman who later killed himself. When asked in French if his blunder meant he didn't understand Quebec, Carney said that wasn't the case, asserting that his French wasn't perfect, but adequate. I spent more time in Quebec in the leadership race than anyone else, he said in French, citing his many Quebec cabinet ministers and noting a large portion of his 150-person campaign team hails from Quebec. Of course I'm not from Quebec. Not everyone is from Quebec. I come from Alberta. I was born in the north, and my French is fine, but not perfect. Carney did express regret at his Tuesday comments. I very much regret that I misspoke yesterday. The horrors of December 6th massacre at École Polytechnique are very much still with us, and the lessons are still to be fully learned. What else have I got here from Carney? Canada, a country for Canadians or a cornucopia for globalists. This is from Population Institute Canada. Why am I bringing this up? Because the Century Initiative was brought up the other day. Not by Pierre Poilievre, but by a reporter. And here's what Poilievre said.
Week, Mark Carney added Mark Wiseman to his list of advisors on Canada-U.S. relations. Mark Wiseman was the co-founder of the Century Initiative, a lobby group that wants to bring Canada's population to 100 million people by 2100. Can I get your reaction to that? And what do you think, how do you feel about the idea of rapidly expanding Canada's population to reach 100 million by the end of the century?
Well, it shows that the Liberals would be no different in a fourth term than they were in the first three. The Liberals destroyed our immigration system in their first three terms in power. They followed a radical globalist ideology of massive, uncontrolled population growth that put strain on our housing market, our healthcare, and our job market. Now, corporate elites like Mr. Wiseman and Mr. Carney loved it because it drives wages down. It takes jobs away from our workers in numbers that we can't replace by growth in the job market. But it's terrible for our working class. And by bringing on Mr. Wiseman, it shows that Mark Carney supports the Liberal Century Initiative to nearly triple our population to 100 million people. We voted against the Century Initiative in the House of Commons, and the Liberals voted for the Century Initiative unanimously. That is the radical Liberal agenda on immigration. We will get back to moderate, reasonable levels of immigration. Our country was built by common sense immigration, but we need to ensure we grow the housing supply, our health care, and our jobs faster than we grow our population. And so I will reject the Century Initiative and get back to common sense immigration that brings people to Canada in numbers that we can hire, that we can house, and that we can care for. That was the best immigration system in the world, and we're going to bring it home again.
All right, so, well, Poilievre is, in fact, talking about lowering immigration numbers. He's not very specific with it, and he's certainly not saying we're going to bring in people who can actually help the country and not harm us by sucking all the money out of the country the first month or two they're here. Also, where they come from, what they believe. Our social fabric is in jeopardy right now. I stopped at a Tim Hortons to have coffee with a buddy this morning. It was about 10:30. And I looked around, just looked up and looked around, and there was not one Canadian working at that Tim Hortons, and there was about 8 or 9 people behind the counter. Not one Canadian. And then I looked around, and I started counting the people who were in our midst. There was 25 people. Do you know how many people looked like they were old stock Canadians out of 25? 9. So if this ridiculous immigration doesn't stop soon, Canada will be lost. The Canada that we know and love will be lost. And at that stage of the game, hell yeah, United States, here I come. Oh, one more thing about Mark Carney before I move on to the Century Initiative thing. Who's the French reporter on Rebel News? I like her. She's got guts. She was out in the streets of Toronto earlier today. You know that truck they have, Rebel News, right? They got the truck with the big video screen on the side of it. And on the video screen, there was a picture of Mark Carney with Ghislaine Maxwell at that thing, at Garden Party in the UK in 2013. And so she was asking people what they thought about Mark Carney's association with Ghislaine Maxwell, and by association, obviously, Jeffrey Epstein. And here's one interaction she had.
Lies. It's all lies.
What is lies on this?
That he was with Epstein and Maxwell.
But you have a picture of them together.
That's not even him. It doesn't even look like him.
It's him.
It's
you
not.
don't find that on the picture?
I'm
is
sorry.
not.
I used to be a journalist, and I'm not buying it.
It's not him. You're saying to me it doesn't
Yeah,
like him
no,
at all.
No, the face is shorter. The chin is longer. No,
So what do you think it is? That picture?
some other guy. It's just some other
What
guy.
was the relationship? It's just what we want to know.
Oh, well, we need a truck driving around influencing
Because
people.
nobody's talking about it.
Because there's nothing to talk about.
But the fact
Do
that
your
they
research,
are
honey.
here.
Do your research, she
Not
says.
only she actually ran away and accused me to not do my research about Mark Carney, but his dog just make a big poo on the ground and she didn't actually clean it afterwards.
My dog make a big poo on the ground. She don't clean it. Funny. All right, back to the population growth. This is from Population Institute Canada. Ireland is having a bad problem with this, too. So much so that Conor McGregor appeared at the White House. I think I showed you video of that last week. Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter, UFC fighter, he was at the White House last week talking to the president, Donald Trump, about all of this. And there's the possibility, because he's so angry about it, there's the possibility that he may run for president in Ireland. We'll get to that. Canada, a country for Canadians, or a cornucopia for globalists. Does Canada's immigration policy reflect Trudeau's globalist connections? This article comes from last year. Who actually sets Canada's immigration policy in Trudeau's government? It's not often that the CBC, a booster of high immigration, raises concerns about Canada's immigration policy, but in a January 4th article, again last year, the CBC questioned the role of the consulting firm McKinsey and Company in setting that policy. Oh. The article, titled "The Value of One Consulting Firm's Federal Contracts Has Skyrocketed Under the Trudeau Government," says that the Liberals have so far spent 30 times more on McKinsey services than the Harper Conservative government. Under Harper, McKinsey received a total of $2.2 million in contracts. So far, under Trudeau, the CBC reported, it's received $66 million. More recent revelations indicate that federal contracts with McKinsey since Trudeau took power actually exceed $100 million. The government department that made the most use of McKinsey's services was Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. McKinsey got its first contract with IRCC in August 2018, and since then, IRCC has paid McKinsey $24.5 million to develop and implement various strategies for its own transformation. According to an IRCC spokesperson, McKinsey was tasked with reviewing, developing, and implementing digital tools, processes, and services. Anonymous sources in the IRCC who felt that department bureaucrats had been pushed aside reported that McKinsey's influence over Canadian immigration policy had grown in recent years without the public's knowledge. Professor Isabelle Fortier of the École Nationale d'Administration Publique in Quebec said the use of firms like McKinsey supplants the internal expertise of the civil service and operates as a shadow government without transparency or legitimacy. The CBC article notes the federal government's immigration targets announced in November of 2022 are very similar to the recommendations of the Advisory Council on Economic Growth, which was created by the Liberal government in December of 2015 and chaired until 2019 by McKinsey's then global head, Dominic Barton. McKinsey and the World Economic Forum. In McKinsey's own words, it's operated as a single global partnership since its foundation in 1926. Perusing its website on January 16th, the opening day of the World Economic Forum's 2023 annual meeting in Davos, one could believe that McKinsey's primary objective was to implement the World Economic Forum's agenda. On that day, the top banner on the landing page on McKinsey's website read, "Why Davos Matters More Than Ever," with the subtitle, "Global Challenges Call for Global Leadership." Just below that banner, we were invited to meet the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders. The Forum of Young Global Leaders was created by the World Economic Forum's chairman, Klaus Schwab, in 1993, originally as Global Leaders of Tomorrow, to promote the WEF's agenda of globalization. The World Economic Forum describes its mission in a 24-page institutional brochure, which is hyperlinked on this page. Under the section, Our Mission, Entrepreneurship in the Global Public Interest, we're informed that the World Economic Forum is an independent international organization. By the way, the United States USAID gave them $65 million. I'm not sure if that was in 1 year or over the period of many. But why would they need any money from the United States government? Because they could. The WEF is an independent international organization committed to improving the state of the world by engaging business, political, academic, and other leaders of society to shape global, regional, and industry agendas. Incorporated as a not-for-profit foundation in 1971, headquartered in Geneva, the forum is tied to no political, partisan, or national interests. Under the section Our Culture, a unique global institution, the brochure describes the World Economic Forum's role as an international organization. We know all about this stuff, right? But what the hell is going on in Ireland? Here's Sky News with a story on Conor McGregor and the immigration issue over there.
Some angry reaction from political leaders in Ireland tonight who've been insisting that Conor McGregor does not speak for Ireland. It's after the mixed martial arts fighter was welcomed into the White House earlier for a meeting with President Trump. And he spoke to reporters in the press briefing room there.
The illegal immigration racket is running ravage on the country. There are rural towns in Ireland that have been overrun in one swoop, that have become a minority in one swoop. So issues need to be addressed. And the 40 million Irish Americans, as I said, need to hear this, because if not, there will be no place to come home and visit. You know, Ireland is at the cusp of, potentially losing its Irishness.
Well, in the last few minutes, he spoke exclusively to our correspondent, David Blevins, who joins us now. David, there's obviously controversy around McGregor being in the White House anyway because of his civil conviction for rape.
That's right. Just 5 days ago, Ireland's Prime Minister, Micheál Martin, was welcomed into the Oval Office, and there was a really awkward moment for the Taoiseach when Donald Trump described Conor McGregor as his favourite Irish person, because just 4 months ago, a woman who had accused Conor McGregor of rape won her civil case for damages in Dublin. And that's why many people find it extraordinary that today the President of the United States has welcomed Conor McGregor into the White House. The Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, in a post online said St. Patrick's Day represented the community, humanity, fellowship and friendship spirit of the people of Ireland, and that Conor McGregor didn't represent any of those things or speak for the people of Ireland. But he has now met with President Trump, and I caught up with him a few moments ago as he was leaving the West Wing. Conor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
We had a great meeting with him. He's a great man. I told him his work rate is outstanding, and I wish him all the best.
Conor, the Taoiseach says you don't speak for the people of Ireland. Your response to that?
I am an employer of over 200 people, almost 300 people in the country of Ireland. He's an employer of none. Every available metric available to us has shown that the government of Ireland currently has failed the people of Ireland. In 10 years, Dublin city centre has gone from one of the most safest cities in Europe to one of the most dangerous. So shame on him for saying that, speaking down on an Irishman. I won't speak about him personally. Throw a jab, I could throw many jabs at them. I could throw jabs handily at them. However, I speak on the metrics, and the metrics show they've failed the people of Ireland. They do not represent the people of Ireland.
Conor,
and I'm
what
here.
do you say to people who feel it's inappropriate for you to be here, given...
God bless Ireland, God bless America.
So Conor McGregor taking his platform here to have a dig at the Irish government, and that actually may be the key that tells us what exactly he's doing in the United States, because many people here feel that he should launch his own bid for the Irish presidency.
I still get a kick out of how different Sky News is in the UK than it is in Australia. In Australia, oh, it is so right-leaning. Is that right to you guys? Right-leaning. But in the UK, oh, it's so very left-leaning. Or is that left? Whatever. It's amazing to me. Now, what we've been hearing from Ireland, because this whole Century Initiative thing is not just a Canadian problem, as you know. Europe has been overrun. But somehow Ireland had been spared up until these last few months. And now there's little towns all around that country of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people who long-time Irish residents going back centuries, who've overnight, because of busloads and busloads and busloads of immigrants, refugees, whatever, being brought into their little towns. So overnight, they wake up one day and they are now the minority in their own town. And that's what Conor McGregor is upset about. I find it absolutely amazing. Back to the Liberal government. I don't know how they pulled this off, but they have somehow, even though they're supposed to be in caretaker mode, considering now there is no parliament, we're in an election. But somehow, this story came out yesterday. The Liberal government is lending Atkins Realis, formerly SNC-Lavalin, up to $304 million to design the next generation of CANDU nuclear reactors, a move that could allow the company to compete for work on a massive expansion at Ontario's largest nuclear plant. The loan will go towards an updated design of the CANDU reactor, which is in service at power plants across the country and around the world. Atkins Realis, or SNC-Lavalin, has been leading a campaign called Canadians for CANDU since last year to encourage the government to help fund a redesign called the CANDU Monarch. Now, some are saying that this is Trudeau's goodbye to Canada, one of his last acts as the Prime Minister. But again, when Parliament is prorogued and government, according to Canadian convention, is supposed to be in caretaker mode, how on earth are you making expenditures like this without Parliament? They're talking about $304 million here. It's absolutely outrageous. Oh, here's another thing. Speaking of caretaker mode, not. Sorry, did I use a Mike Myers reference there? This is from left-wing corporate Global News. Ottawa, this is actually kind of funny. I mean, hey, elbows up, right? Elbows up. Day. Ottawa blocks rebate payments to Tesla, bars it from future subsidies. Electric cars. Environmentalists are supposed to love electric cars. Electric cars, awesome! But not Tesla. The federal government is pausing payments that are to be made to EV manufacturing giant Tesla under Ottawa's subsidy program, and has barred the company from future rebates and other programs until the threat of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs on Canada is withdrawn, Transport Minister Chrystia Freeland told Global News. Freeland is currently running for re-election as the Liberal MP for University Rosedale. And she said, as soon as I became Transport Minister, let me be clear. I asked the department to stop all payments for Tesla vehicles in order to fully examine each claim individually and determine whether all are eligible and valid. No payments will be made until we're confident the claims are valid. Why would they not be valid? That's all Tesla makes is electric vehicles. That's it. Unlike all of the other automakers in the world who make gas and diesel cars and electric cars and hybrids, Tesla only makes electric vehicles. According to the Toronto Star, Tesla filed 8,653 rebate claims over a 72-hour span in January, shortly before the program was set to end. Freeland added that the company, which is owned by key Trump aide and billionaire Elon Musk, even though it's only 15%, BlackRock owns a large stake in Tesla, will not be eligible for the incentives for zero-emission vehicles program in the future. Again, they're supposed to be in caretaker mode. I have no idea how they've been able to pull off this nonsense. I found an interesting TikTok account today, but it was on Twitter. So somebody had taken this guy's TikTok and put it on Twitter, and it's been retweeted a lot. The guy's called The Rogue Lawyer. He's based in Ontario, and he had some pretty good stuff to say regarding this whole elbows up Canada-U.S. tariff thing today. Let's have a look.
Why the elbows up strategy is probably one of the worst things Canada could do at the time. The recent posts I'm seeing on social media and people virtue signaling through gutless symbolism about how tough Canada is reminds me of a video I saw somewhere in Asia where a dog comes up and starts barking at a sleeping tiger, and the tiger ignores it and then eventually gets up and just kills the dog. Like, making references to past world wars doesn't make us tough. The Liberal government has spent a decade demasculizing all of our institutions, undermining our defense architecture, not focusing on the border and focusing instead on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and virtue signaling. Our country is a mess. Our military has almost no capacity to influence the world, and we've created a generation of people who are not tough. So to post elbows up, we're tough, that's not gonna cut it, my friends. The United States of America is the most powerful military ever to have existed in the history of humankind. It also has the biggest economy in the history of humankind. We are their ally and northern neighbor. We need to get along with sleeping giants. It's not the time to pretend to be a tough guy, whether or not it makes you feel good in your work because you love to attack Trump. And by the way, if those people who attack Trump, let me give you a piece of advice. And there's a few of you out there who know I'm speaking to. Don't take Trump literally. Take him seriously. But the people who won't do that are the people who are so insecure about their own status that they live to tear down the president of the most powerful country in the world, who got elected with a strong majority by his populace. He has a mandate to do things, and one of his mandates is to hold his allies accountable to make sure that they're treating the United States of America fairly. And if that upsets you, well, go home and cry in your bathroom, but come out and say, okay, let's look at this rationally. From Canada's perspective, we have a $50 billion trade surplus with the United States, the sixth biggest trade surplus of all of the countries that do business with the United States. $50 billion. Canada imposes tariffs on the United States. Take dairy, for example, in some cases up to 250% tariffs on American dairy products if they come in to Canada. we have to be aware that this is not a one-sided world where Trump is bad and Canada is amazing. We have been taking advantage of the US-Canadian economic relationship, and that's okay. That's what we should do, up until the point that somebody goes, wait a second, you haven't been paying rent in my house for a while, so now you got to pay rent. And when they ask you to pay rent, you don't accuse them of being barbarians. You look at it and say, hey, can we make another deal?
Right? I mean, he's absolutely right. He makes a great point there. I've been sleeping on your couch for a year. I told you it was only going to be for a month until I could get my shit together. So you're right. You're right. I should move out, or maybe we can work something else out. Makes sense to me. A couple more things here before we wrap it up for the night here, you guys. So this is from Juno News. We do have the extension tonight, and we are up and running on shadowdavis.com and on Telegram tonight. If you haven't joined the group, Shadow at Night Community, go ahead and join it. And you can chat while the extension is on. Tonight we're going to leave it on Telegram because I felt bad about last night not streaming for whatever reason. So this news came from Kian Bexty today, and we're going to play you some video in just a second. But hang on, let me make sure that I've got the sound on this, because if I don't, you guys won't be able to hear it, and that would suck. So let me just take a couple of seconds here. Sound up. Cool. All right, so let's throw this up on the screen again. Story goes along with the video. Liberal Thomas Keeper hit with allegations of physical abuse, sexual assault. Thomas Keeper, the Liberal Party's candidate in the swing riding of Calgary Confederation, faces a series of disturbing allegations from former friends and associates. This story is not long. There he is there, Thomas Keeper. The Liberal Party's candidate in Confederation, Calgary Confederation, faces a series of disturbing allegations from former friends and associates, including claims of unwanted sexual advances, physical aggression towards his spouse, and verbal abuse against at least one woman. Juno News spoke with over half a dozen sources that have detailed accounts of Thomas Keeper's disturbing past behavior that all occurred prior to seeking public office with the Liberal Party of Canada. So let me throw this up here. So Kian Bexty, who made this report for Juno News, wanted to get Thomas Keeper's side of the story. So he went to track him down at his campaign office. And here's what happened.
Kian Bexty here with Juno News. I have a story to share with you today that is rather alarming, and I didn't think that I would be covering it today. Instead of covering the much bigger story that I have coming down the pipeline later this week, I was approaching Thomas Keeper, the Liberal candidate for Calgary Confederation, a toss-up riding that Mark Carney and the Liberals could easily win in Calgary if polling stays consistent. I had questions to ask Thomas Keeper about his past, about his relationships with acquaintances and friends, serious allegations about Thomas Keeper that I needed to get his side of the story on. I texted him, I called him, I emailed him, and I approached him outside of his campaign office, where I had an envelope of the questions to hand him.
Mr. Keeper, Thomas. Hi, Thomas. I just have some questions to ask you. We just have some questions to ask you. Hi, Mr. Keeper. Okay, great. Thank you.
No. Sorry. Carly, come in.
I need my dog.
Sorry.
We just have some questions to ask you.
This happens from time to time. Politicians don't want to answer tough questions, especially when they're prickly, especially in the middle of an election campaign. I understand that. This story is so important, so explosive, that I am required, obligated as a journalist to responsibly communicate this story with the subject, Thomas Keeper, and get his side of the story. I was shocked when he called the police on me after that interaction that you just saw. The police approached me and they asked me if anything happened, if I got physical. I said, no, of course not.
At any time, was there any physical contact or anything like that?
No.
Any threats?
No, not to me, no.
Okay.
Or to him, obviously.
Yeah, just the nature of the interaction, just you asking him some questions.
Yeah. They went inside to speak with Thomas Keeper himself, the Liberal candidate, and I decided to go across the street, keep things calm, and wait for the police to come out, and I presumed they want to chat with me again. I was right. They did want to chat again to inform me that Thomas Keeper would be seeking a restraining order against me, a journalist, because I got physical with him.
They may seek a restraining order. If the restraining order gets granted, there may be a clause in there with no communication. Just be careful.
Okay.
You'll get served a copy of it before it is.
Okay.
So I heard your side of the story. I heard his side of the story. I guess he's claiming you went in and came in kind of hot and made physical contact with him.
What? Now, you've seen the video yourself. You know that I didn't get physical with Thomas Keeper. I didn't assault him. I didn't punch him. I didn't attack him. But he told the police that I got physical with him. And that was justification for telling those officers that he would be getting a restraining order against me, applying to a judge and lying to that judge about the basis of why he was doing that. It's outrageous. And I need to show this to you right now, everything that happened, so that you can see for yourself that Thomas Keeper is lying. I didn't get physical with him. And we're going to still publish our story about him, whether he responds to us or not. I hope that he does, because I want this story that we're publishing later this week to be well-rounded, to be fair, and to get the truth out there. It's important, especially in a toss-up riding like Calgary Confederation. Thomas Keeper, if he wants to become a member of Parliament, owes it to the people to be honest about his past and about what happened today. I didn't assault him. I didn't get physical with him. And telling the police that a journalist did do that as justification for a restraining order so that you don't have to answer questions is outrageous behavior for a public official. For the Countersignal and Juno News, I'm Cian Bexty. Stay tuned. We'll have more to come.
That's crazy. This guy, I mean, what is it with liberals? All he had to, I mean, he went running like a skull. All he had to say was, look, man, no comment, no comment. Right? That's it. Now, Bexty, apparently, like they were saying in the story, has got the word of what? At least a half a dozen of this guy Keeper's friends and family, and allegations of unwanted sexual advances, abuse. Looks pretty bad. And here we are in the middle of an election campaign. Oh, speaking about an election campaign, here's an editorial piece. We're not going to read the piece. We're just going to show you the headline here. It comes from the Globe and Mail. Some people still believe that the Globe and Mail is some sort of down-the-middle journalistic beacon. Come on, man. Look at this. The book on Poilievre. This is from Lawrence Martin. I don't know who that is. Public affairs columnist with the Globe and Mail. And these guys, you know, the Globe and Mail, they still have quite a reach across the country. The book on Pierre Poilievre. He's an angry teenager in the body of a grown man. Sounds to me like the Globe and Mail are throwing their lot in behind Mark Carney. But why? Here's why. The Century Initiative, you know, it's been in the news for the past week ever since Mark Carney hired Mark Wiseman as one of his close advisors. Mark Wiseman, the co-founder of the Century Initiative. On the Century Initiative webpage, they say the Century Initiative announces partnership with the Globe and Mail. And this goes back 4 years to March of 2021. The Century Initiative is pleased to announce a new multi-year partnership with the Globe and Mail. As our national media partner, they'll help us connect with new audiences, raise awareness of our work and why it matters. We want to bring your population up to 100 million by the year 2100. And we don't care who comes in, just as long as they come. We're pleased to be partnered with the Globe and Mail in our mutual pursuit of building a better Canada. So do you think the Century Initiative, which is so highly endorsed by the Liberal Party of Canada and completely and totally reviled by Conservatives, including the Conservative Party of Canada, do you think the Century Initiative partnered with the Globe and Mail may have had something to do with an article about Pierre Poilievre being an angry teenager in the body of a grown man? I do. Tonight on The Extension, we are going to, well, not we, Derek Brose is going to discuss Are we headed for a technocracy? Regardless of who's in power where, is this the plan? Technocracy. No more voting. Just do what the experts tell you to do, and everything is going to be good. And if you don't, like maybe Mark Carney says, I really appreciate the way China operates their AI systems and some of their programs. Is he talking about that digital recognition software that China's got over there? All those millions of cameras monitoring their 1.4 billion people, making sure they don't step out of line. And if they do, their social credit score goes down. And next thing you know, they get kicked out of their apartment, or their internet slows down, or they get demoted at work, or whatever the case. Because that's what happens in China under that social credit system. And that's what they want to bring in here as well. Technocracy, my friends. That's coming up in the extension tonight. I love you all. I appreciate you all. By the way, if you're not a member at shadowdavis.com, all access member, become one. It's like $11 to $12 a month. And coming soon, in the next couple of weeks, you'll have your chance to win Shadow Davis merch. It's not even going to be for sale, at least for the few months. There's Shadow Davis mugs, 20 ounces, big ones, and Shadow Davis t-shirts in white, in black, and in this very cool teal color, which I'll be showing you guys in the next couple of nights. And so the only way to win some of that stuff is to become a member at shadowdavis.com, where the extension will be starting in 2 minutes' time. For the rest of you, I love you all. I appreciate you all. I'll catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central for another episode. Bye for now.